So, you want to get to gaming. You only got about $125 to $150 to spend. Is that even possible? Can you get gaming in 2021? Well, I got a solution for you, and that's coming right up. So, for any of my returning subscribers, I think you might know where this is going. Alrighty guys, so quick disclaimer. Obviously, there's no way you can build a gaming PC that is under $150 that you can actually get gaming now with. So you're going to have to go down the pre-built route, which the Dell Optiplex, obviously, as you guys know in all the videos you've probably seen me do on them now, that it is a perfect platform just for that. You can go there kind of with like some HP machines as well, but Optiplex is typically what I prefer. I know it really well, and well, I have one on hand still. So quick recap of this build here. What we got is the Dell Optiplex 3020, which I made a video on, I'll put up in the top right hand corner, where we hunted down this particular Dell Optiplex and some other parts to build up a cheap gaming PC. So this model of Dell Optiplex is still available for around about the same price that I paid for, being 60 bucks back in November. Yeah, you might have to do a bit more hunting than I did then, and you might have to be a little more patient, but I've seen them go right now. I just checked on eBay at the time of the filming of this video. They're going for around $50 to $75. So know that they're out there. You can get them. Just be patient and definitely do your hunting. So $60 invested in a Dell Optiplex, right? And that gets you the Core i3 4160. There are some other i3 models, and if you can get an i5, even better. i7, don't really count on it for $60, but the remaining system hardware that comes with this Dell Optiplex, being the main things to cover, is the RAM, which we have 8 gigs of DDR3 1600 megahertz, as well as a 500 gig hard drive. Yeah, we would like an SSD because that delivers a lot better load times and boot times, but we're after the pure extreme budget, just get gaming now type mentality here, right? So what else do we need? Well, we need a video card. So luckily for me, I still have a video card I have on hand that I picked up in a parts hunt video, which I have in the top right hand corner, but this is a RX 560 4 gig model from Gigabyte, actually a nicer RX 560. So it does require auxiliary power. Some cards of this lower spec do not require that, which would make for an easier solution for you, where all you would have to do is plug it into the PCI Express slot and just go. But this does require some auxiliary power, though it still is a very low power demanding card. So where do we go from there? Well, we need to get an adapter here, which I got on hand, and I purchased one of these from eBay. This is literally a $2 part. It's a SATA to 6-pin PCIe adapter, and basically all you got to do is snag one of your available SATA power cables. I think there's about 2 in this system, and then just plug it right into the graphics card and ready to go. So what left more to be said here then? We're gonna go ahead and get this card installed into the system, which will take all of about, a whopping 3 seconds. I'll show you how I do that real quick, and then we'll cut over to some benchmarks that we'll follow up with, checking out some games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, some modern titles, some easier to run titles, and see what you can really do with such a low spec system like this in today's modern 2021 gaming world. So let's get cracking on that. Alrighty guys, so we'll quickly install the video card as promised here. So first thing to do here is just to open this latch on the back. I did already take out the PCI Express brackets there. They kind of just fall out when you do that. So if you want to keep these, you can. If you want to take them out, it's fine too. It's not really going to negatively affect anything if you have them in there or not. Well, let's go ahead and put the video card in. We're going to line up the notched end on the bracket of the PCIe slot. It can only really go in one way, so line up the gold pins there and put it into that slot, as well as you're going to tuck the bracket into the back side of the motherboard that's closest to the case. It can only really go in one way, and then once you got it all lined up, just give it a firm push, and you'll hear that nice satisfying click to let you know that it is fully in there. And we can close the bracket on the back by just pushing it closed, and that holds the video card in there nice and snug. Last thing to do is we need to connect our auxiliary power, which again is going to be really easy. So we got our adapter that we're going to adapt onto a SATA power cable. Put in the PCI power cable on the video card, and then come over here and grab one of your free SATA power cables for your drives that you normally would run SATA power for. Connect it up and you are good to go. Now you have a gaming PC. But a quick note, if you are feeling cautious about this adapter, should be plenty fine doing it for this type of system. This is a very low power draw card. We're at a very low power draw CPU. We have 290 watts of power available to us in the budget of the power supply, so we don't really have anything in particular to worry about. I'd imagine this thing's only gonna pull about 150 to 170 watts from the wall. So on to the benchmarks now, and let's see how well this little $125 gaming PC can perform. Alrighty guys, so I figured I'd cover the benchmarks here a little bit differently since there are some things to talk about in regards to getting this machine at a playable experience for most of these games. So first up we have Fortnite, which we were able to get a pretty high frame rate, but the problem being with that is high frame rate tends to put more stress on the CPU. So what we were seeing was that frames were exceeding basically what the CPU can handle. So if we take that into consideration and lock in our frame rate at 60 FPS, because that's going to be about the refresh rate of a budget system anyway, and that is actually the refresh rate of the monitor I'm testing with, we're able to get a very then playable experience even at high settings. So the high settings allows the GPU to put in the work that it should be doing. We set it to an epic view distance and, as mentioned, cap the frame rate to 60 FPS. So all in all with that, we were able to average 57 FPS as an average, 1% low of 21 FPS, and a 0.1% low of 9 FPS. Again, the big key thing here is capping the frame rate so that way you can have a smooth, enjoyable experience. All right, then next we have Apex Legends on our list, and actually Apex Legends is a bit smoother and easier to play than Fortnite, and that's exactly what we found. We were able to set the settings to high, did not have to cap the frame rate. There was no detectable CPU bottlenecks even through high settings and uncapped frame rates, and we were able to see about an 80% utilization on the CPU. So we just left the settings as a high and just went off and played to see what we got, and we got a good experience. So 59 FPS as my average, 1% low being 30, and the 0.1% low being at 2. So with a 2.1% low, yeah, there was probably a stutter here and there, but it wasn't detectable to an amount that made the gameplay unplayable. So it was very nice and smooth, and I had a good time playing Apex Legends. The next game up here we have is PUBG, and again we had to kind of do some fine tuning here, starting off with high settings and uncapped frame rates, and just kind of where I standardly start wasn't a good playable experience for PUBG. We were getting some severe stutters and bottlenecks, and what we found out, actually the bottleneck being the GPU. So by noticing that, I was able to set the settings down to low so that way we can not tax the GPU as much and get it working as seamlessly as possible. I was a little afraid of a CPU bottleneck during that, but turns out we didn't have a problem with that, and we were actually able to handle the frames as the GPU was pushing it to the CPU. So made for a playable experience, and we were able to average a 45 FPS. Yeah, not super awesome as far as a high frame rate, but very playable experience still. 1% low of 20 and a 0.1% low of 2. All right, so now kind of dipping into some easier to run games, we got CSGO, and we just stuck with our high settings. No adjustments really made to that at all, and we were able to pull in 125 frames per second, a 1% low of 55, and a 0.1% low of 7. So this is exactly what this type of PC should be targeted for. This lower end style gameplay makes it real easy to run and a very enjoyable experience. Yeah, we're not gonna be pulling super high frame rates again, but at the same time we can get off to the races and get playing. All right, so next title up on the benchmark being Valorant, and we saw pretty good numbers out of Valorant too, mainly because it's a super easy to run title just like CSGO. We set the settings at high 1080p to start with, and the game was super playable and smooth, so I didn't really see any particular reason to be making any adjustments. So we're able to pull in about 94 frames per second on average, 1% low of 39 and 0.1% low of 8, but we could actually probably tweak the game to push the GPU a little bit harder, which would in turn push the CPU a little bit harder and could attempt for some higher frame rates, but I'd say 94 on average is pretty solid. And again, we're just after playable, fun experience here, not super high fidelity or super high performance gaming. All right, then here, last title I have here being Modern Warfare, and this was just for kind of a sake of entertainment more than anything else, just to see what would happen. And what did happen, well, was what we expected. It just simply isn't a playable experience with an i3 and an RX 560. It was kind of teetering on the brink of being playable, so my averages were in like say the 40s to 50s, but my 1%, 0.1% lows were just atrocious, meaning that there was sometimes either the CPU or the GPU were the bottlenecks that were creating those big time stutters, and I could not for the life of me get it playable even by doing lots of different fine tunings of different settings in the graphics settings. So I can't recommend this for Modern Warfare. Now know that if you take example of my old Xeon build being the Xeon with an RX 570, you know that that's probably about the area where you can find yourself to have a playable experience. Obviously you're going up in GPU and you're going up quite a bit in CPU, and I even put that to the test here. I got my Xeon back out, put it back in the PC, and noticed that we did make a significant improvement in the CPU performance. The problem being is the CPU is just most of the time just sitting there waiting for the GPU to give it the frames that it needed to process. So the bottleneck just was clearly there from the GPU as well, and we weren't really able to get over that. So not a game I would advise you go play. You can give it a shot. Might be somewhat playable if you really fine tune some settings, but don't expect to get many wins, honestly. So that about sums up all the benchmarks there. I wanted to hit it with some titles and see what is playable, and obviously we have some that are and some that aren't. But let's recap on that real quick and then let's conclude this video. Alrighty guys, so there you have the benchmarks for our $125 PC. Now clearly the intent behind this build is not to be gaming at super high frame rate or super high fidelity. Again, as a recap, this build was strictly only designed to be a just get gaming now, something that you can actually go find some parts for that aren't as crazy volatile as everything else that seems to be out in the market. Now, one caveat here is that I want to be truthfully and 100% honest with you and transparent that this is starting to become even more of a difficult system to put together for $125 to even $150. There's a lot of YouTubers out there that I love them to death and they put out great build guides and they target all these different price ranges, but the thing that literally cannot be done right now is finding a GPU on open retail stores for a even reasonable price. And I'm starting to even see that here with the RX 560. When I bought this RX 560, yeah, I didn't buy it on eBay. I bought it on my local used markets, which I would definitely suggest you explore as your first avenue. If you're only spending 60 bucks, then I'd say it's a pretty low risk to go find someone locally that has something like this. But if you take to eBay, I was really surprised here. eBay's listings are starting to come up as well. And I want to make mention, and I put a little note when I was showing this video card, don't pay over $60 to $80. $80 I would say maybe be your ceiling. This card simply is not worth beyond $80. In fact, before when COVID hit, I would see these on the market for like 40 bucks and I just kind of gave them a hard pass because I knew I could get so much more for just a little bit more money. But obviously that's not the case nowadays. But guys, all is not lost. So it just might be a bit more difficult to find lower end video cards. It's not an endeavor that is completely fruitless and you won't get anything out of it. Keep in mind that you might have to do a little bit of shopping around to be able to find these things. And like I said, go for your local used markets. But some alternatives you might be wanting to look into that are of about the 75 watt power draw that either require just an auxiliary 6-pin like this one or maybe none at all, is to keep your eye out for a 1050 Ti, a GTX 1650, or an older GTX 750 Ti. The 750 Ti is going to perform a little bit less than this guy, but if you're just focused on the basic gameplay elements, it's still going to be just fine. And at least will be a placeholder for you guys to hold on to so you can get to some gaming at some lower end specs and then wait for the markets to recover, so that way you can even go in and put maybe say a used RX 570 in here and really have a good time. So guys, like I said, the idea was to be transparent with you on this build. The build cost me $125. I think you can still go do that. You just have to be vigilant and patient. But also I wanted to see what can a $125 build really do as far as performance, and it does pretty darn good. There's still a lot of upgrade potential in this box, and like I said, if you went after the same things that I went after as far as putting in a Xeon and an RX 570 like I did in my previous video, this thing's a heck of a gaming machine. But all in all guys, I think that about wraps up this. I think the benchmarks speak for themselves. I wanted to go after a very tight, extreme budget, see what it can do, and it did pretty well for what I had come to expect. So if you guys enjoyed the content, then make sure you do the YouTube thing, right? Give me a like if you enjoyed this content and let me know, is this a platform maybe you're looking to start off with just getting some basic gaming going and then maybe upgrade in the future? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear from you guys. But other than that, if you guys stuck with the video this long, then I'd like to say thanks for tuning into this one. I appreciate your time and I'll catch you guys in the next one.